Hi, I'm Jay Primiano, and I wrote Swim That Rock with my best friend, John Rocco.
And I'm John Rocco.
We started working this drift, this very drift right here. We'd start here, work right to the line, and just fill the boat. 500, 600 pounds of chowders, 300 pounds of necks. And John was on board the boat with me, and he would just pick all the clams. He might have been 12 years old when we started together.
I wrote a poem. I had this interest in this young lady. I might have been 8 or 9 years old, and I wrote a short poem about, her name was Robin at the time. I think it was Robin. Yes, she probably still named Robin, and she interested me to the point where I wrote a short poem. So that might have been the first poem I ever wrote.
For me, it was actually some drawings that I did. I had gotten this book on The Hobbit, which was based on the Rankin and Bass film, the animated film, and I copied all the characters on my window shades. And that way, when my mom came in the room, I could pull the shades up and she wouldn't see that I had drawn Smog and Gollum all over the window shades.
A friendship. That's it's only improved our friendship. It was a wonderful friendship to begin with, but that's the greatest achievement here, for sure.
Yeah, and it's a friendship that's lasted 35 years. So, you know, if the work that we did before on the boats didn't kill us, then there's no way working on a novel together was gonna, I mean, it's only bonded us closer.
I've definitely had more difficult professions than being a novelist. It's been a great joy to have been engaged in this process with him, and we've shared so much together, you know, and it's only strengthened our friendship.
My thinking when we were writing it, and Jay, you may have a different idea, but my thinking when I was writing each day, I was thinking about myself at a certain age when I was somewhat reluctant to read, and I was thinking about the things that I like to read, which were Old Man and the Sea. I wanted to read about people on the water, and I wanted to read adventure. And so that person was probably 10 years old to 14 years old, and needed something that moved along, you know. And so I would say that the reader that's most geared towards is that.
I will answer it this way. And you know, at first when we were writing, there was an understanding of a certain age block. But then after writing the book and then watching my daughter's response after she read the book, which was outstanding, because she was just overwhelmed by the book. She was crying, and she was very proud. And then she created a sculpture and then submitted this long written analysis of Swim That Rock. And I realized that not only had I assisted in creating something that was really important, but that it had affected my own family in a profound way. And I also think it may have an audience with older ladies, because my mother's 81 and she's got about 50 people.
Always going for the older ladies.
There were 2 bits of advice that really profoundly affected my process, and that was from John's wife, Eileen. She just said, write everything, write everything, write everything, write. So essentially, button chair, get the button chair, do the work. That was one. And then Fred Lynch, the accomplished illustrator and also our friend who we used to live with, he suggested that we write, and I write, what I know about. In this writing opportunity, we had I had a real understanding of this world, and it really affected the writing just to a great degree. And it was great advice. That was from Fred Lynch. Write what you know.
For me, let's see, greatest piece of advice I ever got, and I still abide by it to this day, was from Maurice Sendak, who I met in 1991. I was about to embark on my very first children's picture book called Alice, and it was being written by Whoopi Goldberg, and I was to illustrate it. I just graduated college, and I was terrified. And I met him at a party that she brought me to, and he gave me his phone number, and he said, listen, if you get stuck, call me. So I called him, and I said, look, Maurice, I'm completely terrified. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what Whoopi wants, and I don't know what, I didn't know how to make a book, let's be honest. And he said, look, don't draw for Whoopi. Don't draw for the publisher. Don't even draw for the kids. Draw for you. And if you love it, other people will too. And I've stuck by that since. And it's really meant a lot.
Oh boy, we're getting some wonderful responses from these students. And they come up after and speak to us and ask us for our autographs. And it's such a blessing to have that kind of experience. You know, it's unbelievable.
And you're Chris's kids.
Oh gosh, yeah. My neighbors, Chris Cowan and his two sons, Sam and Ben. They're accustomed to going clamming with me. You know, we go out clamming, and I went out to get my chest waders on, and I had that short pole and rake, and I was bull raking, and I overheard them as they were scampering along the shore picking up shells. I'm going to be Jake. No, I want to be Jake. You're Tommy. So our characters had just come alive for me right before my eyes. It was the most powerful moment by far for me. You know, it's like being a professional wrestler every day of the week and having a match every day of the week for 8 or 9 hours.
As far as the physical labor, yeah.
There's a lot of physical labor associated with it.
We don't wear leotards and masks.
It's rough. It's somewhat dangerous, but essentially you're holding a T-handle like this, with between 48 and 72 feet of pole, aluminum, telescopic, high-grade aluminum pole that are clamped together with very dangerous clamps. And then on the end of this thing is a Neanderthal type of implement. It's made of steel, and it has a tang that is attached to the pole. And then attached to that, and there's a basket that comes around like this, and there are teeth. And these teeth are sharp. There's 24 to 28 of them, and they can be anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5.
It's like the end of a bunch of steak knives.
3.5 inches and in depth. And sometimes people work with 4 inches. I never did. Of teeth, and you're lifting with the thrust of the rake and the pulling of the rake with your body weight in your arms and everything you have. You're actually moving with a lot of technique associated with this as well. You're moving that rake in this way, in this direction,
through the mud,
and there's not always mud. Sometimes it's harder bottom of sand, and you're driving the clams by the water pressure up into the back of the rake where they're held by the virtue of this water pressure. And then those clams are in there, and that's at a point we could feel that it was full, and then we would pull hand over hand at that time. They use potholders now. That's cheating. And hand over hand.
An electric winch.
And John and I would do this together, and you're very close to the other person, and you can't make a mistake, because if you do, you get cut, like John did on that fateful day when he cut his hand, and I took off my sock and put it on his finger, and we continued to work. That's the process. So it's a combination of athleticism, power, technique, psychological preparation, because you got to get your head around doing that for 8 or 9 hours a day, and I think making the tactical moves, just as this particular book has a chapter Swim That Rock has a chapter called Tactical Moves. Making those tactical moves, and that was my responsibility as a captain, was essential to the success of the boat.